here. So let's break this down. Joining me now to talk more is Laurie, travel expert. You know, a lot of people are worried about flying after stuff like this happens. So let's talk about what we're looking at here. The NTSB is looking into Boeing 737 MAX manufacturing and inspections. So how will these findings of this investigation impact how the company moves forward? Because this is a very big deal.
Yeah, it is. It's a really big deal. And, you know, this investigation is going to play a critical role in how Boeing does move forward. These hearings are set up to uncover where the liability and the blame actually falls in regards to this blowout that happened on Alaska Airlines. They're trying to figure out where the oversight went wrong. And the NTSB says they're going to use this information from these hearings to then make those safety recommendations to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Now, there has already been some changes in regards to how Boeing is producing their airplanes since this incident has occurred. You know, oversight has increased and their manufacturing speed of the airplanes has decreased to allow more time and eyes to inspect the new builds. And at the beginning of the month, Boeing actually announced that they bought back their shares of Spirit Aerosystems to bring that company back in-house to increase their own oversight, hoping that this situation doesn't happen again.
I just keep looking at those pictures and I just can't believe it happened. And I can't imagine what it would be like to be sitting there. I fly with my 11-year-old son all the time. And if I was sitting there with him, it would be so terrifying. It's terrifying for anyone. Boeing's senior vice president of safety is among those being called to testify in this hearing. So what do you think we're going to hear?
Well, from what I've read recently, it sounds as though Boeing is talking about a paper trail gone wrong. They're saying that they're missing some documents and work orders related to the bolts that were supposed to be attached to that door plug that attaches that plug to the aircraft itself. So they're saying that they cannot actually find the work order that instructed their employees to attach those bolts. And because of that, maybe that's the reason why those bolts weren't attached to begin with. Now, of course, like I just mentioned, they've made some changes. So this should not happen again, especially now with everyone watching Boeing pretty much on a daily basis and the NTSB having this 20 hours worth of hearings set up. But that's what I'm expecting to hear Boeing say. It has something to do with the paper trail. But at the end of the day, you know, my first instinct is to think, is there actually a work order to put every screw or bolt on an airplane as it's being manufactured? Or is this just an easy excuse for them to start this hearing off with?
Right. And, you know, this is getting expensive. Boeing has agreed to pay a $243 million fine as part of a plea agreement with the DOJ for violating a 2021 deferred prosecution agreement. So we'll start there. The company has also pledged $455 million to boost safety and compliance measures. So whose job exactly will it be to make sure these new safety measures are in place? You mentioned those work orders, but, you know, we need more oversight, clearly.
Oh, absolutely. You know, prior to all of this happening, the FAA did have an inspector placed at Boeing, but Boeing was actually given a little bit more leeway, and they were allowed to hire that inspector. They were allowed to bring that inspector in-house, and they actually worked for Boeing. So now, since all of this has happened, like I said, they've taken a step back. The FAA has their own folks in there overseeing production, overseeing the safety and quality of the builds that are coming out of the factory. So that extra little leeway that the FAA had given Boeing has now been removed. And there was a lot of other little situations like that in which Boeing, just because of how big they are and how much they produce, they were given some insight. You know, they were given insight into this very investigation as it was unfolding. And they actually got in trouble for releasing some of the information before the NTSB released it in their own report. And because of that, they're not being privy to all of the findings until the very end now.
You know, Bobby, I have to ask you one last very quick question. After watching this, and you're a travel expert, do you tell people to keep their seatbelts on after watching that? Because after watching that, I don't think I'm ever not going to wear one.
I always keep my seatbelt on when I'm sitting in my seat, because you also never know when you're going to hit clear or unexpected turbulence. And that's usually where you find those other news stories where people hitting the ceiling because of turbulence. Because they're sitting there without wearing their seatbelts. I would always wear it.
All right, Laurie, with a great background, you're a travel expert. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.